Hi, my name's Dr. Steve Simpson. Thanks for finding my YouTube channel. And I work as an elite performance coach, and don't worry, don't switch the channel if you think this doesn't apply to you. Well, my view is that it definitely does, because I believe that under the right circumstances, just about anybody can be an elite performer in at least one area of their life. And this is what I spend all of my time researching and talking to people about, and indeed making these videos and writing books and articles. And this is my latest book, The Psychoic Revolution, and for those of you who are interested, you might want to explore that. But my research takes me down some rather scary rabbit holes sometimes, and I think it was last year I made a video about the views of Albert Einstein, the Nobel Prize winner. Well, he's a man whose work I greatly admire, and I also greatly admire his philosophical viewpoints. So I was staggered to discover that he believed in predetermination, that pretty much everything that happens to us in our lives and everything we do is predetermined. And he was a religious man as well. So if this is true, then it means that we have a lot less free will than we might like to believe. And if it's true, it means that people like me are pretty much out of a job, because whatever we do isn't going to make any difference. Now, I don't like that as a person, I don't like that as a coach, and I don't think the people that I work with would like it either. So I definitely needed to do a little more research to see if I could square this particularly difficult circle. And it didn't get much help, because I'm also a great admirer of the work of the psychologist Carl Jung, and particularly his views about the collective unconscious, because pretty much all the methods I use in my clients are to do with harnessing the power of the mind, particularly the unconscious mind. And so when I was reading one of Carl Jung's original papers, then I was quite staggered by what it said. Now, to put this into context, he wrote this paper, or presented this paper, in 1936. I think he'd written it a long time before then. And he presented it at St. Bartholomew's Hospital, which is about a couple of miles down the road from where I live, and I pass that place pretty much most days. And he presented this paper in October 1936. Now, that date is very important. Remember that in 1939, the Second World War started, and he was talking about archetypes. You see, he believes that we inherit some archaic remnants going back to our reptilian times, and that all human beings have them, and to a large extent, those archaic remnants, genetic remnants, I guess we would call them now, they apply to all of us, and greatly determine our behavior too, because they are in the murky unconscious mind, and under the right conditions will surface. So, October 1936, this is what he had to say. "There is no lunacy people under the domination of an archetype will not fall prey to. If 30 years ago anyone had dared to predict that our psychological development was tending towards a revival of the medieval persecutions of the Jews, that Europe would again tremble before the Roman fasces," that's a kind of stick they hold, I think, or a staff, "and the tramp of legions, that people would once more give the Roman salute as 2,000 years ago, and that instead of the Christian cross, an archaic swastika would lure onward millions of warriors ready for death, why, that man would have been hooted out as a mystical fool." Well, he certainly would, but how prophetic were Carl Jung's words? Not many people in 1936 just knew just how dangerous Hitler was, and Carl Jung certainly did, and he knew why, because he knew how to influence people by activating their archetypes. Well, that was in his view of the world. So with Einstein and Carl Jung, two of the people that I most admire, saying pretty much the same thing, this forced me into a very difficult corner. And how was I going to climb out of it? Well, if there was a way out, it would be because I'm grounded in my background as a biologist and a medical doctor, And so I know about genetics, and genetics is a fascinating subject, and more is being discovered all of the time. We really are on the brink, I think, of another major scientific revolution. Where it's going to take us to, who knows. But throughout the ages, and presumably for a long time to come, biologists are going to argue about what makes us the people we are, what gives us the skills we have, what makes us behave the way we are. And they say it's a combination of genetic and environmental factors. That's what makes us who we are. Some people think that genetics, what we inherit from our parents, is the most important. Others believe that the environmental influences that surround us, that, the people we meet, the food we eat, the pollution or lack of pollution, all of these things are environmental. They're the most important. And some believe that it's a balance. But nobody knows where this balance is. So further research led me to understand a little more about how the telomeres work. And I made a video on YouTube last year, and you can find that fairly easily, I'm sure. Basically, the telomeres, we have 23 sets of chromosomes. They're pairs of chromosomes. Bad luck for all of those who are men. We are missing half a chromosome, which probably explains why we are more likely to be in prison, commit violent crimes, and become drug addicts and alcoholics and all the rest of it. That's the reason why, and it could just be that that's why women may well be more intelligent than we are, because they've got a few more genes. Anyway, on these 23 pairs of chromosomes, we have about 20,000 genes. People used to think it was going to be a lot more than that, but in actual fact the number keeps being revised down, and we don't have many more genes than a common earthworm, which I guess puts us firmly in our place. Anyway, so there we are. We have our 23 sets of chromosomes, men missing out half a chromosome, and the role of these telomeres is they're like the plastic caps on shoelaces. They fit on the ends of our pairs of chromosomes, and they stop them unwinding because the chromosomes are coiled in what's called a double helix. And scientists have been studying telomeres, particularly recently, and they are finding some association with if your telomeres are short, you're more likely to have genetic damage as the chromosomes unravel, and you're more likely to get diseases and even to die younger. Now the science here is not exact, but people now some people have blood tests and you can measure telomere length. And of course, if telomeres are longer, then that presumably gives you some protection. And the good news is that there are studies coming out that show that the environment can be very important in deciding whether we have short or long telomeres. And some of the factors that are more likely to give us long telomeres are a good diet, freedom from pollution as far as possible in today's world, healthy exercise, doesn't need to be as much as we might fear, and also the power of practices such as yoga and meditation, which of course are going to be very important in the way that I coach people. Now, another bit of research that I came across more recently, and that is the growing field of epigenetics. Because on these genes that I mentioned, 20,000 or maybe even less that we have, it was considered that these genes had a binary function. They were either turned on or they were turned off, and there were no shades of grey in between. But the field of epigenetics proposes that indeed that our genes are not fixed, or whether they're switched on and off is not fixed, but it's a dynamic, and again can be influenced by environmental factors. And it just might be the same things that promote increased telomere length, such as diet and exercise and meditation, just might have benefits on determining whether certain genes, particularly the most harmful ones, are turned on or off. So that's an increasingly important field of study for the scientists. They're getting very excited about this, and of course how they will be able to modify the genes that are switched on, which could have a huge influence. So what I would say about this is keep an open mind, and I would watch this space, because although of course I'm not a gambling person, but if I was, I think that over the next few years we're going to learn a lot more about epigenetics, and it's going to be fascinating stuff. So, more soon. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you again shortly.